Emily was a little girl who lived in a small town, surrounded by busy streets, neighbors who rushed through their days, and children who played loudly in the schoolyard. But for Emily, the world always felt a little too quiet, a little too lonely. She was only 8 years old, but her eyes carried a sadness that made her seem older. Every morning she would put on the same faded dress and worn-out shoes, walk to school with her head lowered, and sit in the last row of her classroom, where no one really noticed her. Her father had left when she was still very young, and her mother worked long hours at a small bakery to keep food on the table. Her mother loved her dearly, but exhaustion often kept her from spending much time with Emily. Most days, Emily woke up alone, got herself ready, and came home to an empty house. She had learned to prepare her own small meals, to clean her own school bag, and to wait patiently for her mother's return. But no matter how much she tried to stay strong, the silence in the house pressed down on her heart. At school, things were not easier. Other children laughed and ran in groups, sharing secrets and playing games that Emily was never invited to join. She wasn't mean, she wasn't unfriendly, she was simply invisible to them. She didn't have shiny new shoes, pretty hair ribbons, or the latest toys that made other kids excited. Instead, she carried a small old notebook where she drew little pictures of flowers, houses, and sometimes faces she imagined could be her friends. But no one ever asked about her drawings, and no one sat beside her during lunch. The teachers, though kind in their own way, were always busy. With so many students to guide, they rarely noticed when Emily's eyes drifted toward the window or when her lunchbox stayed closed because she was too shy to eat in front of others. She completed her homework quietly, never caused trouble, and never raised her hand in class. To them, she was a silent student, easy to forget. Every afternoon when the school bell rang, children rushed out, their laughter echoing in the hallways. Emily walked slowly behind them, clutching her little notebook tightly, and made her way to the park. The park was her safe place. There she would sit on the same old wooden bench, tucked beneath a tall oak tree. She would watch the world move around her, mothers pushing strollers, fathers tossing balls to their children, friends sharing snacks on picnic blankets. And though she sat alone, Emily imagined herself part of their happiness. Sometimes she sketched what she saw: a child chasing a butterfly, a boy flying a kite, a family sharing sandwiches. Her drawings were full of color and life, though her own days often felt gray. The notebook became her secret treasure, a place where she could create the joy that reality didn't give her. But deep down, she wished she didn't have to pretend. She wished someone would sit beside her, smile at her, or ask about her pictures. She wished she had someone who would see her, really see her, and not just walk past. One particular afternoon, the air felt colder than usual. The sky was covered with gray clouds and a chilly wind blew through the park. Emily sat on her bench with her small lunch of bread and cheese, staring at the ground. Children played nearby, but no one came close. She sighed softly, pulling her coat tighter, and wondered why the world always seemed so full of life for others, yet so empty for her. She didn't know it yet, but something was about to change. The kind of change that begins quietly, like a whisper in the wind, but grows into something powerful enough to reshape an entire life. As she sat there, a large shadow moved across the grass. Emily lifted her head slowly, her eyes widening as she saw a German shepherd walking steadily toward her. The dog was big, with strong legs, pointed ears, and eyes that seemed both sharp and gentle at the same time. At first, fear ran through Emily's chest. She had never been close to such a large dog before. Her first thought was to clutch her notebook and scoot farther down the bench, but the dog didn't bark. It didn't growl. It simply stopped in front of her, tilting its head slightly as if studying her the way no human ever had. Emily's small heart beat quickly. She whispered softly, almost to herself, "Go on. Don't hurt me." The German shepherd did something unexpected. It sat down, right there in front of her bench, as though it had chosen to stay with her. Its tail brushed against the ground, and its eyes never left her face. Emily blinked in surprise. She had expected it to run past, to follow some command, to search for its owner. But no, the dog had made a decision of its own. For the first time in weeks, Emily felt the corners of her lips turn upward into a small, shy smile. She whispered again, this time a little louder. "Hello?" Her voice trembled, but the dog wagged its tail gently, as though answering her greeting. She reached into her lunchbox and pulled out a tiny piece of bread. Her hand shook as she stretched it toward the shepherd, not sure if it would snap at the food or turn away. Instead, the dog leaned forward carefully and took the bread from her palm with a tenderness that startled her. She let out a little laugh, soft but genuine, and the sound surprised even her. From that moment, something inside Emily shifted. She didn't feel as invisible anymore. For once, someone, or rather, something was looking at her, choosing her, and showing her a kind of gentle loyalty she had never known. The people passing by slowed their steps when they saw the sight. A fragile little girl, sitting alone on a bench, smiling as a strong German shepherd sat beside her like a silent protector. Whispers spread among them, but Emily didn't notice. For her, the world had narrowed to this moment, this bond forming between her and the dog. And so, in that cold, gray afternoon, the story began. A lonely girl who thought no one cared had found a friend in the most unexpected place. She didn't know the dog's name, didn't know where it came from, and didn't know why it had chosen her. All she knew was that for the first time in a very long while she felt seen. The next afternoon, Emily walked back to the park with a strange feeling in her chest. It was not sadness, not loneliness, something new, something warm. She carried her small notebook in her hands and her old lunchbox tucked under her arm. Her eyes kept darting around the park, searching. Deep down, she wondered if the German shepherd would return. Maybe yesterday had been a lucky accident. Maybe the dog had simply passed by and she would never see it again. Her heart beat faster as she reached the bench under the oak tree. For a moment, she saw nothing. The park looked the same. Children laughing in the distance, parents talking together, birds hopping across the grass. She sighed and sat down quietly, telling herself not to be foolish. It was only a dog, after all. Why should it come back? But then she heard it, the steady sound of paws against the ground. She looked up and her eyes lit with surprise and joy. There he was. The same German shepherd walking straight toward her as if he knew exactly where she would be. His ears perked up, his tail wagged softly, and his steps quickened when he saw her. Emily's lips curved into a real smile. She whispered, "You came back." The dog reached her bench and sat down in the same spot as yesterday, looking up at her with those deep, thoughtful eyes. Emily couldn't explain it, but she felt as though the dog understood her. She opened her lunchbox, breaking her bread into small pieces, and carefully fed him one bite at a time. He ate gently, never rushing, never pulling, as though he respected her timid hands. After finishing, the shepherd placed his head on her lap, surprising her so much that she froze. Slowly, carefully, she raised her small hand and stroked his head. His fur was thick, warm, and soft under her fingers. She laughed again, a little louder this time, and the sound echoed like music through the empty corners of her heart. For the next few days, the same thing happened. Every afternoon, Emily found her way to the oak bench, and every afternoon, the German shepherd found her. He appeared from somewhere in the park, steady and calm, and walked straight to her side. It was as though he had made a promise, one she didn't even know about. The two of them began to form a routine. Emily brought extra pieces of food from home, saving them from her already small lunch. Sometimes it was bread, sometimes cheese, sometimes a tiny slice of apple. The dog never complained. Whatever she gave, he accepted with grace. After eating, they would simply sit together. Sometimes Emily drew in her notebook while the dog rested by her feet. Sometimes she spoke softly to him, telling him about her day, about the books she read in school, or about the loneliness she felt. He never answered, of course, but his quiet presence made her feel as though someone finally listened. The bond between them grew quickly, and it was not long before the townspeople noticed. One afternoon, while Emily and the shepherd sat together, a group of children playing nearby pointed at them. "Look at that dog," one boy shouted. "Why is he always with her?" Others gathered, watching curiously. Some whispered, some giggled, but no one came closer. They had never paid attention to Emily before. Now they saw her differently, not as the sad girl on the bench, but as the girl with the big, beautiful dog who never left her side. Soon, adults began to notice too. Parents who walked through the park slowed down, their eyes following the pair. Some nodded with smiles, some frowned with worry, and some whispered among themselves. It was not common for a child to sit alone with such a large dog, yet there was something gentle, almost magical, about the way the shepherd behaved with Emily. But not everyone was kind. One day, a group of older boys approached Emily. They had seen her many times alone and thought of her as easy to tease. With cruel smiles, they circled around her bench. "Why do you always sit here alone? one sneered. Talking to a dog now? How pathetic, another added. They reached for her notebook, trying to snatch it away. Emily's eyes filled with fear, and she hugged the book to her chest. Her voice shook as she whispered, "Please don't." Before the boys could grab it, the German Shepherd stood up. His strong body moved between Emily and the bullies. His fur bristled, his ears flattened, and his deep bark thundered through the park. The sound was so loud, so powerful, that the boys stumbled backward in fear. The dog didn't attack, he didn't need to. His presence alone was enough to send them running. Emily sat frozen, staring in shock as her protector turned back to her. His bark softened into a whine as he nudged her hand gently as if to say, "You are safe now." Tears welled in Emily's eyes, but for the first time, they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of relief. She wrapped her small arms around the dog's neck and whispered, "Thank you." People in the park had watched the entire scene unfold. Whispers spread quickly. "Did you see that?" The dog protected her. What a bond they have. That girl isn't alone anymore. Emily, who had once been invisible, was suddenly seen. From that day, children who had ignored her began to look at her with new curiosity. Some even tried to sit nearby, asking shy questions about the dog. Emily, still timid, answered softly, but the glow in her eyes was undeniable. In the evenings when she returned home, her mother noticed the difference too. Emily's shoulders no longer slumped and her face carried a quiet joy. She even began humming while helping with small chores. Though her mother was often too tired to ask many questions, she felt something had changed for the better. Day after day, the connection deepened. Emily would draw pictures of herself and the dog together, her pages now filled with joy instead of empty scenes. Sometimes she sketched him sitting proudly, other times lying beside her. Her notebook, once a silent cry for friendship, now became a collection of memories of her new companion. And while Emily could not explain why this German Shepherd had chosen her, she no longer cared about the reason. All that mattered was that he came, he stayed, and he gave her something no one else had ever offered: unconditional friendship. The little girl who once sat alone in the park, ignored by the world, now had a guardian at her side. And with each passing day, the bond between them grew stronger, preparing them both for moments ahead that would surprise not only Emily, but everyone who ever doubted her worth. Emily woke up the next morning with a different kind of excitement in her heart. For so long, mornings had only meant another quiet walk to school, another day of sitting in the back of the classroom, another lunch eaten alone. But now she carried with her the thought of the German Shepherd, the faithful companion who had come to her side again and again. At school, the whispers about her had started to spread. Children who once didn't know her name now spoke about the girl with the big dog. Some were curious, some jealous, and some simply amazed at the sight they had witnessed in the park. Even the teachers had heard about it. One of them gently asked Emily, "Is it true, dear, that a dog waits for you every day?" Emily blushed and only nodded. For the first time, her classmates looked at her not with pity or indifference, but with interest. That afternoon, Emily almost ran to the park, her notebook bouncing in her arms. She feared that maybe, just maybe, the dog wouldn't come today. Maybe it had all been a dream that would suddenly end. But as soon as she reached the oak tree, her doubts vanished. There he was, standing tall, tail wagging, eyes shining the moment they saw her. She laughed with relief. "You're here," she cried softly, dropping to her knees as the shepherd ran toward her. He nuzzled her face, licked her hand, and pressed against her like he had been waiting all day for this moment. To Emily, it felt like magic. From that day on, Emily and the German Shepherd became inseparable in the eyes of the town. If she was at the park, he was at her side. If she walked down the street, he trotted proudly beside her. Strangers began to smile at her, neighbors waved, and shopkeepers nodded kindly. It was as though the strong, noble dog had wrapped her in an invisible shield of respect. But the bond was not only something people noticed from afar, it was something that grew deeper between Emily and the shepherd each day. She began to talk to him as though he were a person. Sitting on the bench, she whispered her secrets, how she missed her father, how she worried about her mother's long hours, how she wished she had a friend at school. The dog would tilt his head, ears twitching as though he truly understood every word. His calm, steady eyes gave her comfort in ways she had never felt before. One afternoon, something happened that made the townspeople talk even more. Emily had been sitting on the bench drawing a picture of the shepherd in her notebook. Suddenly, a group of older children came running through the park, chasing a ball. Without looking, one of them bumped into Emily, knocking her notebook to the ground. The pages spilled open, fluttering across the grass. Emily gasped and scrambled to gather them, her heart sinking. Those drawings were her most precious possessions, each page a piece of her heart. The children laughed carelessly, not realizing the weight of what they had done. But before Emily could speak, the German shepherd sprang into action. He darted forward, scooping the scattered papers with his nose, holding some gently in his mouth and even standing guard over the ones on the ground. The children froze in amazement as the big dog calmly returned each page to Emily. He dropped them at her feet, then stood tall beside her, eyes locked on the children, as though warning them not to laugh again. Silence filled the air. The children, once so careless, now looked at Emily with wide eyes. One of them whispered, "That dog, he's amazing." Another murmured, "It's like he really understands her." Emily hugged her notebook tightly, tears stinging her eyes. But this time they were tears of gratitude. She knelt beside the shepherd, pressing her cheek against his fur, whispering, "Thank you, you're my hero." Word of the event spread quickly. By evening, nearly everyone in town had heard how the German shepherd had not only protected Emily, but also saved her beloved drawings. Suddenly, the girl who had once been ignored became the subject of admiration. Children at school began to approach her, asking shyly if they could see her sketches. Adults began to greet her with gentle smiles, some even asking about her guardian dog. Emily's world was changing. The loneliness that once felt like a heavy blanket was being lifted. It was all because of the shepherd, but the bond was not only about protection or admiration, it was about healing. Before, Emily had carried her sadness silently, never daring to hope for joy. Now she woke each day with purpose. She prepared small bits of food, packed her notebook, and looked forward to the moment she would meet her companion. The German shepherd had given her what no person had ever managed to: hope. Still, questions lingered. Where did the dog come from? Why had he chosen her? No collar hung around his neck. No leash guided his steps. He seemed to belong to no one, yet at the same time he seemed to belong completely to her. Emily wondered about it sometimes, but she never let the thought trouble her heart. All she knew was that he came back every day without fail. One late afternoon, the sky turned golden as the sun dipped low. Emily and the shepherd sat together under the oak tree, the light casting long shadows. She rested her head against his side, feeling the steady rhythm of his breathing. She whispered softly, "I don't know why you came to me, but I'm glad you did. You make me feel like I matter." The dog lifted his head and let out a low, gentle sound, almost like a sigh. Emily smiled, believing it was his way of saying he felt the same. That night, as she drifted off to sleep, Emily's dreams were no longer filled with empty rooms and silent lunches. Instead, she dreamed of running through fields with her faithful dog, laughter ringing through the air, the world finally full of color and love. The bond between Emily and the German shepherd had become something extraordinary, something people in the town couldn't stop talking about. But for Emily, it was far more personal. It was not about what others saw. It was about what she felt deep inside. She was no longer invisible. She was no longer unloved. And as their friendship grew stronger, the unthinkable moments that lay ahead would prove to everyone that the connection between a lonely child and a loyal dog could change not just a life, but an entire community. Days passed, and Emily's life began to feel different in ways she had never imagined. The once empty park now seemed like a place of hope and happiness. Every afternoon she would arrive with her small notebook and a piece of bread or cheese, eager to see the German shepherd waiting for her. The dog never failed her. He arrived at the same spot under the oak tree, his strong, proud posture greeting her as if to say, "I am here, and I will not leave." People in the town had started noticing this special friendship. Neighbors who once hurried past without a glance now waved to Emily as she walked to the park. Children who had once ignored her smiled shyly and sometimes came near to watch her draw. Even teachers at school began to mention the dog, curious about the girl who had suddenly caught the attention of the entire community. One bright afternoon, as Emily fed the shepherd a small piece of bread, an elderly man appeared from behind the trees. He moved carefully, leaning on a walking cane, and wore a gentle, kind expression. Emily noticed him staring at her and the dog, and she felt a little nervous. "Hello," she said softly, unsure of who he was. The man smiled and spoke in a calm voice. "I believe this is my dog," he said, pointing to the German Shepherd. Emily's heart sank. She had grown so used to seeing him as her own companion that the thought of losing him made her chest ache. But before she could respond, the man continued. "I've seen how he comes to you every day. He seems to have chosen you. I didn't expect this. I was going to take him home, but I can see he belongs here with you at least part of the time." Emily blinked in surprise. She hadn't expected this kindness. The man, who could have simply taken the dog away, instead offered her a chance to continue the bond she had grown to cherish. "Really?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "Yes," the man said, his eyes softening. "He seems to have a connection with you that I can't explain. I think he wants to be near you. You bring him joy, and he brings you protection and comfort. That's rare, young lady." Tears welled up in Emily's eyes. She looked at the shepherd, who seemed to understand every word, and then back at the man. "Thank you," she said quietly. "Thank you for letting him stay with me." From that day forward, the man became a gentle presence in Emily's life. He visited the park often, bringing small treats for the dog and sometimes sitting beside Emily to talk. He shared simple stories from his own life, teaching Emily lessons about kindness, courage, and patience. Slowly, Emily began to trust adults more, understanding that not everyone would ignore or hurt her. Meanwhile, the German Shepherd continued to protect and comfort her. One afternoon, a small boy ran past her bench, accidentally tripping and falling near the oak tree. He cried loudly, frightened by the sudden impact. The dog immediately stood between Emily and the boy, barking not aggressively, but in a way that calmed both children. He nudged the boy gently with his nose, encouraging him to stand up. Emily helped the boy to his feet, and for the first time, she realized that she was not only safe herself, she could also help others with the dog's guidance. The bond between Emily and the shepherd had created a ripple effect. Children at school began to approach her more often, asking questions about the dog, wanting to draw with her, or just sitting quietly nearby. Teachers noticed her growing confidence. She no longer sat silently in the back row. She raised her hand, shared her ideas, and even offered to help younger students with reading. Each small victory made her heart feel lighter, more hopeful. One day, Emily's mother noticed a change too. After a long day at the bakery, she returned home to find Emily smiling, humming softly, and arranging her drawings neatly on the table. "Emily," she said gently, "you seem so happy today. What's changed?" Emily hesitated, unsure how to explain everything in a few words. "It's the dog, Mama. He comes every day. He keeps me safe, and he makes me feel like I'm not alone." Her mother's eyes softened. She had worried for so long about Emily's loneliness and the quiet sadness that seemed to weigh on her child's shoulders. Now, seeing her daughter laugh and talk, she felt a warmth that had been missing for years. She hugged Emily tightly, whispering, "I'm glad you have him, and I'm glad you have hope again." As the days turned into weeks, the German Shepherd became more than just a protector. He became a bridge connecting Emily to the world around her. He helped her find courage to face challenges, to interact with her peers, and to trust adults who genuinely cared. The once invisible girl was now visible in ways she had never imagined. People in the town began to greet her, smile at her, and even offer small acts of kindness. Emily's world, once gray and silent, now shimmered with color and possibility. Then came a day that changed everything further. While Emily and the shepherd were playing quietly in the park, a small commotion drew their attention. A group of children had trapped a stray cat near a bush, laughing and teasing it. Emily felt her heart tighten. She wanted to help, but she wasn't sure how. The German Shepherd stepped forward. He positioned himself between the children and the frightened cat, his strong body a protective shield. The children stopped, startled by his presence. Emily ran forward, carefully lifting the cat and holding it close. She looked at the children and said firmly, "Leave it alone. You wouldn't want anyone to do that to you, would you?" The children, embarrassed and intimidated by the dog and Emily's sudden courage, slowly backed away. Emily's voice, once timid and uncertain, now carried a calm authority that surprised even her. She set the cat safely down under the oak tree, where it quickly scurried to safety. The shepherd sat beside her, tail wagging gently as if approving her bravery. That evening, as Emily walked home with her mother, she felt something she had never felt before. Pride. Not pride in winning a game or earning praise, but pride in knowing that she had stood up for what was right. The German shepherd had guided her, encouraged her, and given her the courage to act. For the first time in her life, Emily realized that she had a role in the world. She could make a difference, protect others, and be seen not as a lonely girl, but as someone capable and important. The dog had shown her that the unthinkable could happen. A lonely child could be noticed, loved and empowered by loyalty, compassion, and courage. And as she drifted to sleep that night, Emily whispered to the German shepherd, who slept quietly beside her, "Thank you for finding me, for staying with me, and for showing me that life can be full of hope. I'll never forget you." The shepherd, with his steady, warm presence, seemed to understand completely. His journey with Emily was far from over. There were still challenges ahead, new surprises and lessons to learn. But one thing was certain: the bond they shared had changed her life forever. The town that once ignored her had begun to see her. The girl who no one cared about was slowly becoming someone unforgettable, and the German shepherd had done what no one else could. He had given Emily the gift of courage, friendship, and the chance for a brighter future. Emily woke up early, filled with a sense of excitement and peace that she had never felt before. The sun shone brightly through the window, casting warm light across her small room. She looked over at the German shepherd lying at the foot of her bed, his steady breathing and calm presence filling the room with comfort. For the first time in her life, Emily felt truly safe, truly loved, and truly seen. The park had become their daily ritual. Each afternoon, Emily would pack her notebook, a small snack for herself and a treat for her loyal companion. Together, they would walk to their favorite oak tree, where they shared laughter, stories, and moments of quiet understanding. The town had begun to notice their bond, and people who had once ignored Emily now smiled and greeted her warmly. Her life, once lonely and gray, was slowly blooming with hope and kindness. One particular afternoon, Emily arrived at the park with her notebook tucked under her arm. The German shepherd was already waiting, sitting proudly beneath the oak tree. As she approached, he ran to her side, nudging her hand gently as if to say, "I've been waiting for you." Emily giggled and hugged him tightly. The people passing by paused to watch the scene, some whispering to each other about the extraordinary friendship between the little girl and the dog. But it wasn't just the townspeople who were noticing. Emily's teachers had begun to see changes too. She no longer sat quietly in the back of the classroom. She raised her hand, shared her thoughts, and even helped other children with small tasks. Her confidence had grown, and the bond with her loyal companion gave her courage she never knew she had. She realized that being kind, patient, and brave could make a real difference, not only for herself but for those around her. That afternoon, as Emily drew in her notebook, a small group of children approached cautiously. They had been observing her from a distance for weeks, curious about the German shepherd and the little girl who seemed so special. One of them, a shy boy named Jacob, finally spoke. Can we see your drawings?" he asked quietly. Emily hesitated for a moment, then smiled warmly. "Of course," she said, handing him the notebook carefully. One by one, the children looked at her sketches, amazed at the detail and beauty of her work. They pointed to the drawings of the dog, of the park, and of little scenes she had imagined. "You're really good," Jacob whispered, and Emily felt a warm glow of pride in her chest. The shepherd sat quietly beside her, his head resting gently on her lap, as if he understood that this was another small victory for Emily. As the weeks passed, the relationship between Emily and the German shepherd continued to grow stronger. The dog was more than just a protector. He was a teacher, a friend, and a source of endless comfort. Emily learned to trust her instincts, to stand up for herself, and to show kindness to others. The townspeople, inspired by the bond they witnessed, began to offer small acts of support to Emily and her mother: extra groceries, warm greetings, and invitations to community events. For the first time, Emily felt like she belonged. Then one day, the shepherd did something that would leave a lasting impression on everyone. While Emily was sitting on the bench drawing, a fire broke out in a nearby bush. Smoke filled the air, and a small group of children nearby began to panic. Without hesitation, the German shepherd leapt into action. He barked loudly to alert Emily and the others, ran toward the children and guided them safely away from the danger. Emily followed closely, holding her notebook tightly, and watched in awe as her loyal friend took charge. The townspeople arrived soon after, calling the fire department and praising the dog for his bravery. Emily's mother, who had rushed to the park after hearing the commotion, embraced her daughter tightly. Tears streamed down her face as she looked at the German Shepherd. "You saved them," she whispered, her voice full of gratitude and amazement. Emily hugged her companion, feeling a deep sense of pride and love. The dog had done the unthinkable. Not only had he protected her, but he had also helped others, showing courage, intelligence, and loyalty beyond measure. After that day, Emily's life was forever changed. People in the town no longer ignored her. Children invited her to play, neighbors greeted her with smiles, and teachers spoke proudly of her courage and creativity. She continued to draw, filling her notebook with stories of friendship, hope, and adventure, often including the shepherd in every scene. She had learned that even a small act of kindness or bravery could create ripples that changed lives. Emily's mother noticed the transformation as well. Her daughter laughed more, spoke confidently, and carried herself with a new sense of self-worth. The long hours at work seemed less heavy, knowing that Emily had found a friend and protector in the German Shepherd. Together, mother and daughter found joy in the small moments. Walks in the park, shared meals, and evenings spent drawing and talking about the day. The shepherd remained by Emily's side through every step of this new life. He was there for quiet afternoons, playful evenings, and even moments of doubt. When Emily felt unsure of herself, he nudged her gently with his nose. When she felt afraid, he stood tall and brave, giving her the courage to face the world. The bond they shared was unbreakable, a testament to the power of loyalty, love, and understanding. And so, the girl who had once been invisible, lonely, and sad was now a symbol of hope and resilience. The townspeople, inspired by her story, began to treat others with more kindness, realizing that every person, no matter how small or overlooked, deserved to be seen, loved, and valued. Emily herself knew that life would continue to have challenges, but she no longer feared them. She had learned the meaning of true friendship, the strength that comes from courage, and the magic that happens when someone cares. And most importantly, she had learned that even the smallest gestures, a friendly nudge, a wag of a tail, a gentle nuzzle, could change a life forever. As the sun set behind the oak tree, casting a golden glow across the park, Emily sat on the bench with her German Shepherd beside her. She looked around at the children playing, the neighbors passing by, and the teachers watching with pride. She felt a deep sense of gratitude and happiness. For the first time, she knew that she was not alone in the world. She had friends, she had family, and she had a loyal companion who had done the unthinkable. He had saved her heart. Emily whispered softly to the dog, "Thank you for finding me, for staying with me, and for showing me that life can be full of hope. I'll never forget you." The dog rested his head on her lap, his eyes gentle and wise, as if to say, "Neither will I." And with that, Emily closed her notebook, stood up, and took her companion's paw in hers. Together they walked home, ready to face whatever tomorrow might bring. The girl who no one cared about had found her place in the world. The German Shepherd, her faithful protector and friend, had made the unthinkable possible. And their story, one of courage, friendship, and love, would live on, inspiring everyone who heard it to believe in the power of hope and the magic of kindness.